We are live.
Hello, hello, people.
Is that a? By the way, I gotta ask. Is that a selfie? You're.
Yeah, they discovered me down in South America last summer, and so I thought I'd give them a nice little pose. What
Oh,
do you
at
think?
first I thought that might have been Yoda, but I realized that's the that's the one that they were saying the aliens from South America.
Yeah,
Oh, that's funny. That's classic.
that's crazy,
Oh,
huh?
just really quick. Do you believe in aliens?
Yeah. As far as them being here on Earth, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm kind of agnostic, but something's going on. There's the Pentagon has come out and said that there's things that they can't really explain. It's not ours. It's something else. So whether it's some kind of phenomenon like a weather phenomenon, which I don't think it really is, whether it's the enemy, which I don't really think it is, whether it's an alien from another galaxy, which I don't really think it is, I don't know. But if it is anything, I would think that it could be some kind of uh, intelligent creatures or people that live here on the earth and are hidden under the water, maybe. Or maybe I
So
think David Grush called them interdimensionals, which could be angels or demons or something.
right. So I do got a confession to make to you,
Yep.
Dub. It might come as a surprise,
Hmm.
but I'm an alien.
Oh, really?
I'm actually a legal alien though here in South Korea. Yeah, but I have a card to prove it. I'm a card carrying member that says my alien registration card. So
Are you
it's
an
called the
immigrant?
ARC. Yeah, but you have to. I guess technically speaking, you have to carry around this card here, but like nobody really does. But like I usually keep it at my house because I don't want to
Uh huh.
lose it. Because then you have to go through like this whole process to get it back. But yeah, it's called the ARC, Alien Registration Card. So it's funny because this week we were talking about UFOs in my class, and I freaked my class out because I'm like, I'm an alien, and they're like, what? Like, and I told them what it was. They thought it was funny.
So,
So
what do you think about the whole UAP situation? What's your thoughts?
UAP?
Yeah, the UFOs. That's what they call them now. The government put a new name on it. They're called unidentified aerial phenomenon (UAP).
Well, obviously I believe in aliens because Jesus was an alien, so I obviously support that. Just the actual sense of the word. He was
Hmm.
not from this planet, so yeah, in a very literal sense, I believe in aliens, but I definitely 100, 1000% believe that God has created multiple creations, multiple dimensions. And if you look at like the book of Enoch, which is actually quoted in the New Testament,
Hmm.
I might tell
Yep.
you, by
True.
Jude, you have this whole backstory of what's going on as far as basically celestial beings having sex with women. And if you just think about that, let that seep into your mind for a second. That means that God would have had to have designed the sperm, the egg, to have a possibility to be fertilized by, an interdimensional being. So it's not like this is out there, even according to the biblical perspective, that there's something else that came here and was interbreeding with humans. So I don't when I look at things like Osiris and like Quetzalcoatl, these all these different gods that have existed,
Hmm.
I may be on a small spectrum of Christians who think that completely not only might have existed, probably did exist a lot of these beings that are like hybrids with humans
Hmm.
and animals. That's a
Hmm.
common reoccurrence that you see animals. So maybe they were
Hmm.
having sex with animals, making hybrids, but yeah, I'm a very strong believer in that.
I have a theory. Um, it could be that the Bible is based on aliens that come from another dimension, or aliens that are alien to us, kind of like undiscovered beings that kind of evolved alongside humans. So take your pick, either one of those. But the point being, the Bible writers or the stories sort of talked about alien sightings. And then the attribution was that they were gods because that was the language of the time.
Oh,
Just like
100%.
now, they may not be spaceships at all, but the language of the time now is they're spaceships because we make spaceships and understand spaceships and space aliens and science fiction.
Let
When
me
in
fix my
fact,
sound real quick because I can't hear you guys.
Yeah, and if you look at the descriptions of the stuff that's going on in the Bible, like for example in Ezekiel, what Ezekiel describes does not look like anything that any human has ever seen on this planet before, man. He describes something that is out there, man. And if you look at the actual biblical description of angels, not what humans describe as like, these like beings who can fly and who are like in white robes and halos on their head and wings. Like that's the human depiction, right? If you look at what the Bible actually describes as angels, that would freak you the F out, dude, if you saw that in person. And if you did see that in person, I don't know how any other person would depict that, Like,
right,
how would you describe something that you've never seen before like that? So,
right. See, my thinking is that if these things really exist, that they are some sort of interdimensional or millions of years ahead of us, and as far as technology, then that's kind of indistinguishable from magic, and
absolutely.
and it would be indistinguishable from the concept of angels and demons, and from all the stories you hear, these so-called aliens or whatever we want to call them are not always benevolent. Sometimes they're malevolent. They do damage, they do harm.
Absolutely.
The fact that they're in our airspace and they seem to be disrupting our pilots when they're doing field tests and stuff like that, that's not a loving thing to do. That's kind of an aggression in a way. So you could easily twist that and say, oh, they're demons of my particular religious ideas, and that makes perfect sense.
Can you guys hear me by the chat, Brandon?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool.
And Dub, one last thing before we get into our topic. Any chance you've ever read like the Jacob's Ladder, like visual in Genesis?
Yes.
So if you were to see that, so there's something you could say like, okay, this is just like allegorical. You could totally make that connection between like a messengers coming up and down from heaven. Like this is just a visual allegory of that, right? But then the other interpretation you could say is like this is some kind of highway. Like, okay, like if you were to just look at a highway from the sky, it looks like a ladder going up and down. You can go up and down it. So that might be the kind of like visual, like they actually have to travel through some kind of mechanism to get them from heaven to earth. So like, they can't just teleport. I'm saying like they don't have the means of teleportation. And I don't know. I think some of this is beyond our understanding. But I will just tell you flat out, I absolutely 100% believe in aliens. Not just like they evolved in another planet, though. I mean, I think that could have happened as well. But I think they're deliberate, intentional creations of God. So anyway, on to our topic. Did either of you get a chance to see the State of the Union?
Not I.
I started watching some of it after you said it, and it's hard to digest, I feel like it's one repeated lie after another. So it's like listening to Satan himself practically. But yeah, a little bit of it, maybe like 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
So I will tell you this. There's a couple of things I do want to say because he was mentioning some stuff in healthcare and education and stuff. But okay, yes. Wow, so much to talk about here. But okay, so one of the things that I thought was very, very, very noticeable was that there was an inordinate amount of interruptions of applause. So I think the Democrats were doing that to like basically like run out the clock with him, run out the clock, and then also like give him a chance to collect his thoughts because he was, and this genuinely, it might have just been the case he had a cold or something, but he was coughing a lot. So it's like he was like, it seemed like he was running out the clock and gathering his thoughts. Because the other thing too is they showed a picture, they showed a shot of him from behind his shoulders, and it was clear that he, or at least they put it out of view that there wasn't a teleprompter there. You know, because normally he just reads a teleprompter.
Oh, it's
But
probably
like
out
you
of
could
view,
not.
but he for sure has one.
So
Or
you think
cards
they
or no
just
cards.
well, you couldn't see it though from his view. You couldn't see it.
They made that on purpose look like that so that you
Oh,
didn't know.
okay.
I mean, that guy doesn't even. Have you ever seen him function in any of the press conferences? There's no way in the world he couldn't get through. You know, and he's on drugs right now, high level drugs. You know, so that's what's keeping him alert too.
Yeah, but Joe,
Yeah.
there was a fluid, like it was fluid. Like he was making it through the sentences, and he wasn't like, you could tell that he wasn't reading off of it. Is what I'm saying. Like you could just see it in his eyes because normally he's like stumbling and like looking directly at something. It was not
Honestly,
like that.
I would be 100% sure that if he didn't have no cards he was reading off, he has an earpiece in and he's just repeating things with the same fervor.
Right,
Exactly
right.
what was here. Yeah.
That was the other thing. Maybe there had some kind of earpiece, but you couldn't see that. I was looking in his ear, so I thought maybe it's some kind of like really, really small thing. What do you
Yeah,
think,
it's
Dub?
definitely smoking.
Yeah, I don't trust anything he says because he's a politician, number one, and he's lost his mental faculties. I don't like watching him because he's kind of uncomfortable to watch. It's hard to follow
Mhm.
him. But I was talking to some folks today at work, and everybody was laughing and saying, "Actually, we could actually understand some of the things he was actually saying today." So they were like making a joke, and I'm like, "Wow, what a poor, sad testament if that's the best we've got."
Well,
So
I would, if you look, because I looked into his ear, because I'm like, there's no way that he's actually doing this, and I thought there's only one or two things that could possibly happen. Either they literally have an implant, because they're testing these kind of things right now, the implants that like just go inside directly inside of your ear, or
Yeah.
his earpiece was so small you just couldn't see it.
Oh, for sure,
mhm.
100%. Like he had an earpiece in, like, and it's. There's no way on planet Earth. I would bet my every dime I have. I mean, he can't even function in normal day-to-day life. I mean, like, if you see him ever sit down with reporters and they try to ask him questions, he goes, "I might get in trouble if I say anything," and he just stands there with this glaze in his eyes, like he's an elder abuse is going on or something. Like,
He
yeah,
looks like an
it's
alien.
really,
All right,
really,
Dub.
man.
Dub, you want to introduce the topic?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about. You want to talk about healthcare first? Excuse me.
Yeah, sounds like you need some health care right now.
For real, man. I need some of that
No.
Obamacare. Yeah, we need some of that Obamacare. Okay. Yeah, so we're talking about healthcare, and I think the question of whether secularism or religion is better. My thing, of course, y'all know this, is that better is kind of like, I look at better as a subjective term. So it really depends on individual goals and perspective and values and all that kind of shit. But if we can agree that well-being of people and freedom is really a value, if we can sit down and agree to that, then I would say that secularism is better. It's better, and I'll tell you why. This is just my opinion. For one thing, it has strengths, like we talk about inclusivity, right? And we like freedom, we like well-being. So let's talk about inclusivity. Secularism sort of promotes the idea of a society where people of different religious beliefs, as well as those with no religious beliefs, can all coexist peacefully without killing each other, right?
Okay.
That, I would say that's a good thing, and I think everybody would probably agree.
I agree with
So
that.
when it comes to separation of church and state, secularism aims to sort of separate religious institutions from government, which would foster a more impartial and fair governance system in theory, right? So we talk about individual freedom. So secular societies oftentimes emphasize, freedom of individuals, allowing people to make choices based on their personal beliefs rather than it being dictated by some religious nutcase or government nutcase. How would you like, as a Christian, suppose we get a president in there who is a witch or a pagan or an atheist,
Or a
and they turn
Catholic.
around, or a Catholic, and they say, look, we're no longer going to let evangelicals exist, or we're going to cut down on their rights or anything like that. Like, obviously, no one wants that. At least any sane person wants that. So individual freedom is something I really stand up for. And this has to do with freedom of speech. Like, if guys want to sit out on the corner and yell through a bullhorn about Jesus or about abortion is wrong or whatever, I support that shit 100%. 100%. I will die for their right to do that, right? Because that has to do with individual freedom. But with that comes the opposite. I, as an atheist, have every right to talk shit about those people.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? So there has to
Oh,
be
hold up.
some coexistence,
Dub.
is what I'm saying.
Joe, let me interject for 1 second, and then you can get back. You mentioned witches and Wicca. I do want to say I would prefer a witch over an atheist, but okay, keep going.
Okay. So now there's potential roadblocks with secularism. I'll admit that. Like, there is a perceived lack of morality. And I'm sort of divided on this, because on one hand, I really don't think morality objectively exists. Okay, which is kind of weird for me to say, but there is a perceived lack of morality, and that's not really a good thing, because critics can argue that without a religious moral framework, secular societies are going to struggle to establish a shared set of moral values. Because look, if morality is subjective and made up, which it is, by the way, we're going to constantly, one person's going to say, well, I think it's okay to take away your rights. And another person's going to say, no, I think it's immoral to take away. And then who gets to choose which one is right and wrong?
Right.
But if we can just sort of, I think in that case, the resolution would just be to come to a common understanding. Now, this is kind of a libertarian view. But there's always going to be tensions, and I think we have that problem anyways. We've always had that problem, and we're not in a completely secular society. So the other thing, though, a lot of people are going to say is you're going to have a loss of community with a secular society, because some people, and I admit this, that's, I find a sense of community and belonging in religious groups, right? And secularism might be perceived as isolating or lacking community support, right? Because let's face it, when you go to church, there's a common belief that binds everyone together. And then they don't even have to talk about the belief all the time. It's just all automatically known. We're in church because we believe X. And so then we can build on, come to my birthday party, come to my birthday, come to my function. Let's get together. Let's have a fundraiser. Let's do this. Let's have a party. That's community. And it's really substantiated by a common belief, where atheists have no beliefs, right? Like secular people that are atheists or agnostics, their whole thing is, we don't believe in God. We don't, our whole thing is we don't believe. So what positive thing do they bring to the table? That's the question.
I want to unpack that later, but let's get Joe in here for a second.
Yeah.
On healthcare to start, or
healthcare.
Healthcare is a really different dimension, but I'll comment on it. But what were you going to say, Isaiah?
Well, I was just going to say just 1 second before you started, because I do want to get your thoughts on this, because I think there's you were mentioning something about morality, and I think ultimately this is going to play a role in healthcare. There's no way to
I was trying to get to that quicker.
So you went on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's important because it is going to come into play with this. But Joe, go ahead.
Well, there's a couple of different dimensions to it. One that is just blaring to me from the start is that, would I consider something like healthcare necessary, religious or secular? No, not necessarily. I mean, I think in the Bible, like Luke was a doctor. I think Obviously, Jesus knew he was healing people that were sick. Obviously, there's been some awesome scientists, maybe the best throughout history, that were just trying to heal people, off medicines they created. And, most of these great scientists, though, contributed to God, or great artists, throughout Europe. Science has come a long way. I think it used to actually be called metaphysics or metaphysical sciences. Anyway, with the matching of like God with the study of the sciences, it used to be a whole department in itself, but it since got disconnected, probably with secularism in general, just as it went with, Ivy League schools and higher education. Like, they eventually sort of want to disconnect, I think, for corporate reasons now within the last 30, 40, 50 years, God from medicine. And when the dollar started taking over medicine and getting into universities and getting into through big pharma and through politicians and health, I think we're so disconnected from a sustainable earth of medicines mixed with secular worldviews that at this point you could call medicine fully secular. I mean, doctors have no idea what vitamins are half the time. They don't recommend a certain diet. I mean, it is really bad, man. These guys, I walk in there sometimes to talk to them. I'll say I've been taking, dandelion root or something. They look at me like I'm crazy, but yet it has stopped my heart palpitations, and
So, yeah.
and just there's so many natural medicines. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple of things I want to say, and then we'll, we can get into an open discussion. But okay, so you mentioned about how to say if something is objectively like better, whatever. I will say this: South Korea's healthcare is objectively better than America's. Okay, we have here universal healthcare, and it's affordable. You can go to the doctor, be in and out with prescription in your hand for like under $50.
Mhm.
So when my wife was pregnant, she was in the hospital because she had a C-section. She was in the hospital for an entire week, and we got the bill. The bill was like $1,500, and then like after the insurance, we had to pay like $300. And when I went to America, she was pregnant and she was having stomach ache, and we went into the hospital. They just rubbed they just rubbed something on her stomach, like to do like an ultrasound, right?
Mm-hmm.
$1,000. $1,000.
Whoa.
They didn't give her not one single Tylenol, nothing, not a single thing. So
Damn.
yeah, in here in South Korea, like there are a little bit of sacrifices. I will say, like let's just say the hospitals, they're a lot of them aren't nearly as nice as you might say some of the other hospitals in America. And you might find yourself like kind of like in a dorm hospital, which I was in basically with like 8 other families, 8 other people they're not always in there. Maybe you might have like 6 people in there, but I guess that cuts costs and it's just a lot better, man, a lot better. So, but I do think that Joe is onto something because the Bible speaks a lot about against greed, and basically greed has like really ruined the healthcare system in America. So, I definitely, you and I might disagree with this, but I definitely attribute a lot of that to secularism and the pursuit of worldly riches over like doing the right thing, basically. So, anyway, let's get into an open conversation.
So yeah, I wanted to pick up on that because my little buildup was a little long-winded, but basically it kind of goes into what you just said there about being humane. Like why charge people all this money they can't afford? They're not going to be helped by it. And the argument on the right is going to be a question of morality. Again, this made up term. So they're going to say, well, it's immoral to help these people because what did they do to deserve it? Number one, if they want to spend their money on buying the latest gadgets, the latest iPhones, which everybody has, and they're not putting that money towards their health care, why should I pick up for it with my tax money? Why should my tax money help people that didn't even care to save up for their own health care issues? And so they have this very cold, sort of legalistic way of looking at who deserves what. In their mind, they sort of have mapped out the terrain. Like, these are the folks that deserve health care, the people that make money, make profit, do society well. If you can't afford it and you die on the street, so be it. So be it. You didn't work for it. You didn't work as hard as I did, have the lucky breaks that I had. So you don't really deserve health care. That's the extreme view on the right. But if we're agreeing that well-being is a value, then, that materialistic outlook wouldn't work. And, ironically, this usually comes from the religious right, which is, you always see the memes online on Facebook, like, oh, Jesus was for helping the poor, yet his followers are some of the most conservative Republican people that want to get rid of welfare, get rid of free health care, fight against
not me.
But anyways, that's, well, a lot, you're one of those weak-kneed, flag-waving, phony Christians. So that would explain that. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that IJ is pretty phony, no, really.
That was good.
He's a flag waver. But yeah, so it's just, I think that there's reasons in Christianity for why, you have the right saying what they say. Jesus has said a lot of hardliner things, according to the scriptures. But he's also said a lot of sort of socialist, communist type stuff too. And so each side cherry picks what they want to kind of prop up their view. So my thing is, if we can just put the Bible down for a second and just decide, what do we want as a people? What are our goals? Do we think that the well-being of people is more important than money? If we are willing to say that, then we're going to have to look at a more socialistic system in medicine. Because right now, our healthcare does suck compared to a lot of countries. I'll tell you a really quick story and I'll shut the fuck up. When I was living in Germany, my daughter was born there, right? My wife, she worked for about 6 months before she got pregnant and had to quit her job in Germany as a dual citizen. What she got out of that was that the health care that we got was top notch. When she got pregnant, it didn't cost us a dime. She had the baby, a midwife came in, took care of everything. None of this stuff cost us anything. And it was a great thing. And I was a very strong libertarian at the time, and I was always really critical of the German system. Yet, when the test presented itself, I jumped on that free medicine in a heartbeat, because I didn't want to come out with thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for this stuff, right? So I would really be a hypocrite if I was going to sit here and say it was a bad thing to have universal health care. They had universal health care there, and it worked out for me in my life and my family. So
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it was definitely, I saw firsthand how humane it was.
Yeah, I do want to tell one quick story, and I'll let Joe get in here. But when, South Korea actually is a decreasing population. They only have like 0.8 kids per family. So you have to have like at least 2.1 to have a sustainable, just without any population growth, But anyway, so they're really strongly pushed for people to have kids. So they'll give you like financial benefits, to have kids. And one thing that they do that I think is absolutely phenomenal is, for 2 weeks, they actually pay for like an old grandma lady to come to your house, and she'll spend like 8 hours a day there. It's like it's her literal job. And what she does, she teaches you how to like bathe the kid. She teaches you how to like swaddle the kid, and how to make like baby food and stuff. It is phenomenal. I was like so sad when she had to leave. And then not too long after that, like several months, we went through like a really bad time. I got really sick here, and I couldn't work. And we didn't have like any diapers, man. And that lady, out of the clear blue, just sent like an entire box of diapers, man. We were good for like a month. So yeah,
Wow.
there's no other worse feeling in the world whenever you're a father and you can't pay for like diapers,
Oh
But I was that
man.
sick. I couldn't get out of bed. I was like totally sick. But anyway, that's just something cool that South Korea does. I really wish other places would do that. But Joe, get in here.
Yeah, one of the troubles with this particular topic is I think the whole category is so far gone and needs so much repair. I've almost turned to just a complete government blood sucking, liberal migrant at this point. Like, I mean, I grew up on free healthcare, so I can't argue at all. I mean, I had a gallbladder surgery done that probably would have cost me 30 grand over in California, but they covered it because at the time I didn't have a job and legally or whatever. And I tried to write and I wrote it in, and sure enough, like they paid for it. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. If not,
Mhm.
I'd order, that's like a year of college or something, or maybe 2 years back in the days.
Yeah.
But
By the way, what up? People always talk about they're against something until they need it. Joe's been like the most anti-government stuff until he's actually needed health care and dental care, and then he's all pro it. So yeah,
Joe,
Joe, I don't
come
want to hear
on,
Joe back.
man.
healthcare is a whole different ballgame. Though at the same time, they fed us in schools garbage. They tell us that Kellogg's and freaking cereal are above the food chain, above eggs. I mean, there is so much MGD. I mean, the whole system from the time you're born with sugar, you're just 33% of society right now is pre-diabetic, like in American society. I think it was 60. I think 60% deep. I think 33% are diabetics in society. This includes like little kids and adults. I mean, they call Alzheimer's the third type of diabetes. It's sugar and other products that have been made for us to consume in American society are so bad, have been approved by the FDA. And at this point, I wouldn't trust the government for nothing. But I will say this: the whole system is corrupt. It's all breaking down. All the migrants flooding this thing, it's going to utterly destroy healthcare. If inflation wasn't bad before, it's already bad. I mean, even if it's not really healthcare we're talking about either. Healthcare, they might hand you a gym card, get you a list of vegetables. Snap cards would only pay for vegetables and stuff, but Snap
Right,
card
right.
will pay for soda, and soda is like 10% of what people buy in
And
junk food.
chips.
Yeah, and
Yep.
chips.
It's
So
cheaper.
you would, yes, and so and they're addicted to it, and it's just the whole cycle's broken. Like the whole
Yeah.
thing needs revamped. I mean, we
Well,
need to
there's an
So
ironic. Do you see
Yeah.
the irony though? Can you
which
see
part?
the irony in that? The fact that you got to understand when it comes to secular versus religious. Now, I'm not saying that this is a religious, a truly Christian or religious move, right, or belief, because obviously Isaiah doesn't agree with that, and he's a very religious Christian person. So I'm not trying to say that. But I think the ironic part is that the people who call themselves evangelical Christians are the most capitalistic people in the world.
right.
And so they are really for the things that you're talking about. Like they're for capitalism, anything for a profit type of thing, because in their mind, in their logic, and I used to also be one of those people, mind you, in their mind, when the tide rises, all boats rise. So when you think about companies, corporations, Walmart's, Targets, all of these corporations, all of these pharmaceutical companies, all of these food manufacturing companies and farms, when they're pushing all this poison on people for cheap and getting people hooked like a drug dealer,
Yeah,
that's good for capitalism.
yeah,
And that's creating that's
Right.
they're being job
Right.
creators. They're job creators.
Right.
They're creating a lot of jobs, a lot of
Right.
industries that are benefiting a lot of families in America. And it's helping America rise to the top as a world power. There's no question about that. But what we
Right.
lose is what Joe was just talking about. We're kind of losing something else. We're kind of losing our soul in the process. So we kind of like he was saying, it's so broken at this point. It's almost like you have to either be one or the other. It's like I'm kind of like leaning towards like Joe, like a hard, socialistic sort of thing for healthcare because they fucked it up so bad. You know what I'm
it's
saying?
so bad. It's beyond
So
recovery
bad.
at this point because the
But
problem is it isn't just like for example, even news. Remember, you ever see news ads show up on your computer, or just ads in general for Big Pharma for recommending a
Uh-huh.
medicine,
Yep.
diabetes or whatever for this and that. Here's the thing: the advertising dollars for news agencies and news channels have been so they've compromised news organizations. This is why they never talk anything bad about Big Pharma too. 50% of their ad revenue comes from Big Pharma. So they essentially backdoor, control news agencies from saying anything bad about it, because they say, well, if you say anything bad about us, we're no longer going to pay for these ads to go, because they don't need these ads. A doctor's not sitting here watching these ads and saying, oh, I think I'll recommend those to my patient. And also, patients are not going to run there and be like, I saw this thing on TV. And they've already seen these things. They know about all these things. It's just they're paying the news agencies off to keep from them saying anything bad, to keep everything looking copacetic and just everybody's getting along. This is all natural, normal. There's no naturopathic people. Australia kicked one lady out, and she is the greatest gym in America now, man. This lady can heal stuff. She's taught me so much. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm killing parasites with pumpkin seeds. I'm freaking drinking rosemary with apple cider vinegar. I went all naturopath because they try to put my metformin for diabetes. Man, after so many stomach cramps and metformin, thank God I got off of it too. It ended up causing cancer. Now they're being sued. But I ended up just going a naturopathic way, changed my diet, went salads, keto, Mediterranean. Dude, I'm like, they just shocked at my levels and everything. Like,
wow.
Like,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you know what? Hold on. Yeah, this is another really, really big thing, because this is what South Korea does 100 times better than America, is that they're really into the holistic aspect of medicine rather than just the physical side of it, which has to do with treating the whole person, the mind, with like meditation, relaxation, also herbal medicine, as Joe was talking about, oriental medicine, like acupuncture, acupressure. Also, the government will intervene if your kid is starting to get too fat. So they'll have like an intervention at school, because, yeah, seriously, you don't see a lot of obese people here in South
right?
Korea, because there's also like body shaming that takes place. And I know on the surface level, body shaming sounds bad, but what's worse, feeling bad about being fat, or having your foot amputated later on because of diabetes, so
Yeah.
so then the
There's
other thing, hold on, hold
mhm.
on. The other thing they have is like every neighborhood, and Joe's seen this before. They have like outdoor gyms where you can
Yeah.
go get an exercise for free.
They built
So
it to the
they just
parks.
yeah, you go to the park, and they have like these where you basically just sit down on the machines, and you're working against your own weight. That's the resistance. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to the shame game, I'm like, you know what though? A lot of the progress I've ever made in life was because out of shame. I'm not even gonna lie to you. It's like it's like a lot of people, the important people in my life has shamed me into getting more education, or getting a better financial situation, or getting my body in shape, or people have actually shamed me, and those were the catalysts for change, and I do thank them for that. But that was back then. Nowadays, if you do that, you're considered abusive and toxic.
Right.
And maybe some of that could be, especially in situations where people can't help it. It would be, kind of impossible to
Right.
do something with the shame, except just take it in and get affected by it emotionally over
Right.
time. It'd be a form of it freak you out, trauma.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to
Abuse.
say. It
Right. Right.
traumatize you. But
Right.
if we don't want to traumatize people, so I think it just depends on the person, and no shoe fits all. Shame sometimes works for people. Most
Right.
of the time, probably not, depending on if we're talking about really serious, exaggerated situations. So I'm all for that, like a holistic sort of view. Um, Now, I am not for like a lot of these. You got to understand too. This is where my skeptical side comes in. You got to understand. There's a lot of capitalists out here that also make their money on scamming people,
Right.
and they will sell you, snake oil salesmen. They're going to sell you all sort of homeopathy and things that are proven not to work.
Oh
And
yeah,
so you
those
just
guys. Oh
you
God,
have to
right.
you have to watch that,
Yes.
because
Oh
yeah,
man.
there's a lot of that shit. There's a lot of psychics on the corner out in California, like in LA and stuff like that.
Alex Jones too,
God.
man. Alex Jones always pushing these ridiculous vitamins that can
Theories.
cure COVID-19.
I
Yeah,
will say
it's
Joe
bullshit.
Rogan had one though, Alpha Brain, and I've tried that one. It does work.
It does work. I wanted to
Yeah.
try that. I did
Hey,
want to
get
try
the
that.
one off eBay. It's only like $20. If you go to their
Okay.
site, it's like 60.
Okay, I'll try it. Shit,
Hey,
I try anything.
It works.
by the
Man, like,
way,
honestly, if I don't take it, I notice it.
by the way,
Mm.
wow, that's great. By the way, Dub, you mentioned a really good point about the capitalism, and I do want to say that if you're looking for any kind of consistency with the Bible from the right, one, that's a full error, and you're not going to find it. You're not, because you're not even going to find consistency within the principles of conservatism. Okay, for example, they on one hand want to say that they're all for small government and freedom of rights, and yet they want to invade your bedroom. They want to tell you what kind of herbs you can smoke up. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I'll tell you something, man. I'll tell you something, man. Weed is freaking like God's natural. God clearly made weed to help out with a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Specifically, I'll tell you something
I would
specifically.
agree with that.
Weed helps out with pain. And my own mother passed away from abuse done to her body through prescription drug medication because she got into an accident and then she got a back problem and then it turned into like a full on out addiction and it wound up just totally destroying her life. But I'm positive. I look back and I said, if my mom would have had access to this, and it wasn't so shamed, if it wasn't so shamed, and she could have dealt with this in another way, like with weed, I strongly believe she would still be alive today. But anyway, they want to take away those rights. So yeah, don't look with when your position isn't even consistent inside of itself. Don't look for consistency with the right side, the right wing, and the Bible, because you're not going to find it, man. It's
Well,
capitalism. It's every man for himself.
oh
But
yeah,
I would
yeah,
put
yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
would
what they'll
put
do,
Marianne Williams in charge of the FDA if I could, and she was a Democratic liberal running for president. Marianne Williams.
mm. Well, what about Ephesians 5, I think it's what, 5:18? Let me look that up. Hold on.
Just start the verse. I could probably finish it. But
Yeah, do not get drunk with wine, for that is
Oh, right.
debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit as you sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs among yourselves, singing and making melody to the Lord in your hearts. So, in other words, stay away from drunkenness.
But
So
Paul
a lot
also
of
recommended to Timothy to drink some alcohol for his stomach.
yeah.
and also hold on, Dub, hold on. I don't want you to butcher the Bible because you're an atheist. You don't really know what you're talking about. So it says
Right.
don't get drunk on wine. It doesn't say anything about beer or spirits. So yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Hard
Pharmacia.
liquor. Bible doesn't say anything about hard liquor, vodka, anything like that.
What about the term
That was a joke. That was a
pharmacia?
joke. I
Yeah, the
messed.
term drunkenness. I was gonna say, yeah, the term drunkenness. It's
That
like,
was a joke.
hey, I
That was
heard
my
someone
attempt.
go through a thing earlier about the words gin and spirits. They said that that's why they call it spirit, because it's a different kind of spirit, and you access different spirits when you get drunk. And I'm like, I think I kind of see that makes sense in society. But anyway,
Well, I used to be a hardcore Jehovah Witness way back in the day too.
oh crazy! Now
And
he comes
yeah,
out of the
oh
closet,
yeah.
finally.
And then we used to learn about the Greek word pharmakia, which appears in Galatians, Revelations, some of the Old Testament, and it was related to witchcraft, sorcery, and it was the root word actually for drugs, which came from pharmacy or pharmacists. So it was pharmakia, and it was always related to witchcraft, sorcery, demonic forces.
Right?
And so we were taught that by doing drugs, you're actually opening your mind up for evil forces to take over, because you don't have your soundness of mind. You don't have
Right?
your you need your full faculties when you ask for God's help. You can't be drunk, and you're just open to the demons. So a lot of that pushback like to say weed, legalizing weeds or mushrooms or, some of these things.
Yeah.
These are considered by a lot of these, especially conservative type Christians. They look at that as just another way of opening this country up to the influence of Satan,
Hey, Dub, I wasn't talking about my mom hitting the bong though. That's not what I was referring to. I was talking about like, rubs, and also just the
I used to make that stuff. I love that stuff.
yeah. Joe used to make it actually.
In the spirit of complete honesty, I'm on a 30 milligram oxy pill right now. It feels fantastic. I can't feel a damn thing. It's because I got nerve pain, man. And that's beyond my.
I got one too in my shoulder. That's why I'm not on camera.
That's why mine's at too. It spreads down to my carpal tunnel a little bit or something. It's been getting a little bit better, but when I do tree work, man, I'm finished, man. So I'm like, whatever can get me over that, I don't care what it is.
So I do want to transition to this last point, 2 points real quick, because you mentioned the JWs, and I do have to say that it's specifically with this one, I do think that secularism has it has an upper hand on the spirituality, because as Christians or other people, we say we might forego some kind of treatment, or we might think that certain kind of treatments are bad. So I do think that there is if you don't believe in anything like that, then you're obviously you're gonna have a healthier life. Yeah. One, two, I do want to ask you is like, because I'm under the conviction that like if a parent just has a sick kid and they're just praying for them and they don't take them in and something happens to the kid, that like the parent should be held criminally liable. And I do not think that the Jehovah's Witnesses should be allowed to deny blood transfusions for their kids. Like I think that should be completely stripped away from them.
Thank you. I believe the same way. A child is under the care of the parent, and as far as we know, I mean, coming from especially a more atheistic viewpoint, there is no afterlife that your kid's going to be, because a lot of them, the reason why is because this world isn't what matters. What matters, It doesn't matter if your kid died. He died honorably. He died as a soldier, dying for God. You gave your child the opportunity to serve Jehovah God and Jesus Christ by sacrificing their life for the rule not to eat blood, and take it so serious that they figured, if you can be fed intravenously, then taking a blood transfusion is kind of like eating blood. They took it that fucking serious. So God's going to be happy for their sacrifice, right? But coming from an atheistic perspective, I think that's your afterlife is not a guaranteed thing. It's just a belief. As far as we know, it's just a belief. So this could be the only life that child has. You are responsible for snuffing out the life of your child over a belief, and that's not fair. Number one, it's not fair to the kid because he's not old enough to make his own decisions. He should be responsible, for that,
Yeah, so, I got really far views on this one. Not for the Jehovah's Witness thing. I'm totally behind you and all that stuff. But I think part of our bureaucracy problem is right now is we can't. There's so many government constraints, and they can fine you, imprison you, lock you up. And then on the flip side, you have all this malpractice insurance. Like everybody's constrained, even from alternative medicines and everything. I mean, that it's too strapped to actually evolve. And I think in your case, man, obviously you should have had some help, man, from the Christian. Well, I would say from the Christian community, but with Jehovah's Witness, it's a little tough. Anyway, I really can't speak on the Jehovah's Witness thing, man, but it sounds pretty tragic.
Yeah, it's rough.
Actually, I do want to ask you something. And this might get a little bit controversial here because this is a little bit, this might be a little bit controversial because, so we mentioned about like parents' consent, but then there's also another issue I think that doesn't really get talked about as much, and I do want to get both of your opinions on this because it has to do with whether or not like healthcare or the government should pay for like transitioning for people, uh, transgender people,
Mm,
because something that doesn't really get talked about is that like let's say you have a woman, or I'm sorry, okay, well they might be a woman either way, but let's just say they're non-binary or they want to transition and they want to have their breasts cut off and their uterus removed. Okay, so in doing that process, you there's a lot of the medical side to it, right? Like you not only, because I know this a bit because I'm in a bit the plastic surgery industry here in South Korea, so I know a little bit on the back end. But that's like that kind of procedure is going to knock you out for like a couple of weeks. You know, it's going to knock you out for a couple of weeks, and you're going to have to take a lot of you know, antibiotics. So like you're tasking the a doctor and a hospital to have to be able to use a lot of medication on you and use you know, healing medication for you for something that's not medically necessary. And for the way I approach this is like it would be a different story. Like I might think something differently had I not seen kids around the world in third world situations who need procedures done on them and they can't get them done, you know, because of money, because of resources. So I think of it from that perspective because again, when you see kids who are starving, who don't have money, who have growths on them, like if I'll tell you just something really quick I saw in Haiti. I was at this orphanage and I saw like this boy, and I swear to God, this is, I'm not exaggerating here. I thought they were doing some kind of like voodoo like voodoo ritual on him because he was like screaming and wailing around.
mm,
And what actually happened was that these girls, he basically had this growth on his arm, and these girls basically just held him down and just squeezed the ever loving Jesus out of it and like popped it. I mean, it was like, yeah. So that's the kind of stuff I've seen around the world. You know what I mean? So I think of I do think of the transgender issue like as a concern for the people, but then I also think about is like you're taking resources, you're causing the price of healthcare to go up for everybody for procedures that aren't medically necessary.
okay,
So
well, let me jump in on that one
yeah,
then, because here's the thing. There should I believe that, you know, I'm of the person that feels like we should be focused on well-being for everybody,
hmm,
right? Now, if I do believe that there should be, in that case, as a part of healthcare, gender affirming care. And a lot of people will say, well, how do you know they're not lying? Blah, 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 blah. But you've got to understand. Let me ask you if you're familiar with this. Are you familiar with dissociative identity disorder, DID?
yeah, sure.
Okay. Do you think that's real?
Oh, I know. I've experienced. I know it's real. It's not a question. I
Yeah.
personally experienced it.
So, you know, I was watching something, a documentary on the issue and interviewing a lot of people and showing real life cases um, about people with DID who were experiencing things like identity confusion.
Absolutely.
Some alters could actually see when the person was actually born blind. Some people were, one of their alters was a female, another one of their alters was a male. They had different streams of memories, just a lot of weird stuff. So the human condition is just really weird. So when we think about transgender, that's not really all that weird to me. Like I don't really assume the first thing is that they're lying, because why would they? If you why would you want to do that? Like, so for me, I think they do have an issue. And if healthcare is helping people with DID, then they should also help people with this gender dysphoria or these other sort of things, right?
Hold
The
on, hold on.
question is, yeah,
Hold on. I did not. I have to interrupt you. Because I did not say that they were lying. So the
right,
thing
right,
is,
right,
Joe.
right, right.
Hold on, because Joe will know this better than probably any human being on this planet because he's
Yep.
seen some of the behind the scenes stuff with me that no one else has. So when I tell you that I suffered from gender confusion, and BIID, which is body identity integrity disorder. Like Joe can
Hmm.
vouch for that fact firsthand. That I'm
Thank
not
you.
making any of this stuff up, right?
Thank
So
you.
it's completely real. There's no doubt in my mind. The thing is, I didn't get better though from continually operating in that mindset. Though I sought
Yeah.
counseling, I found religion, and I no longer suffer with those things. So
Mm.
when people come along like me, and then we express some concerns about this issue. You're like, oh, you're transphobic. Like, no, man. I genuinely, my heart breaks for people who would want to subject themselves to the kind of pain and suffering that's going to come about from, you know, uh, mutilating parts of your body. Because there was this case, I am Jazz Jennings, where this they transitioned this girl from okay, so transgender girl. So it always gets a bit confusing, but okay, so a biological boy was transitioned, and they started her on hormonal treatment so that sound weird. Her penis didn't get big enough to the point where they could invert it and make a vagina out of it. Okay, so they had to put these like giant balls scrotums
Ugh.
that like enrich that stretched it out so that they could do that, and then all of these other complications came about as a result of this, and this show documents it all. And like for me, I don't see how you could look at that situation and say we're the loving and compassionate person to try to put someone down this route where they're suffering this much physically, you know.
Yeah,
Right.
there's an irreversible road to it too. And Big
Yep.
Pharma pushes it because it's a long life medication, hormone treatments. You got to get these lubes, these clean outs. I mean, it is a expensive long road. So that's just part of their push. They don't care about
Yeah.
little kids.
That's
They're just about the
very,
money.
very true. That's
You
the other side that's really unfortunate. Again, this is how, capitalism, for all its strengths and great things, sometimes just messes things up. This is an example of that.
Yeah, and these guys have gotten dark to the point where, who would let someone, a kid, make a decision? We can't even let them go buy a beer or buy some
Right.
drugs. People are weed. You think we're gonna let them transition themselves for life off a decision when they were hormonal as a puberty? I mean, come on, man. What we all would have did in puberty. Oh my gosh, we'd have no teeth right now if it wasn't parents saying, "Hey, that's probably not a good idea with just sugar."
Well,
I
this is
mean,
the weird. Here's another. I want to tell you this story too, because this would be really valuable for this conversation. Um, this is where I'm saying that the pharmaceutical companies really muddy the waters on this issue. Like my wife suffered from chronic depression, right? She was getting like knots in her neck and,
oh,
skin lesions, and it was really bad and it was really debilitating, and she couldn't get out of bed. A real thing, right? Well, they put her on all these medications that weren't necessarily helping. They'd maybe help for like 3 weeks, and then you have to up the dose or change the
yeah, right.
prescription. And it was just a nonstop being hooked on these drugs, and it never really solving the root of the problem, only solving the top layer issues. Now, here's the thing. As much as I hate that idea, the fact is her behavior and her moods and everything were so bad that she was like trying to commit suicide and stuff. Like, so these pills actually saved her life in a sense, but did they really do anything to really solve the issue? No. No, they didn't. And and the reason why, I think it's just like you said, Joe. The pharmaceutical companies know it works. They know the drugs are going to get people hooked because they need them, and
Yeah,
they just simply exploit people.
that's it.
So on one hand, we really do need them, but on the other hand, we're being played like suckers. And I think that Isaiah touched on something that is missing here. Intrinsic spirituality rather than exterior or external spirituality, like say going to church and stuff like that. Intrinsic is always healing and positive. So if like you have a belief in Jesus and you really believe and you really pray to him and you really meditate and you really feel his presence in your life, and it means a lot intrinsically, you're going to be better off than an atheist. You're going to be better off than a religious outward fake Christian. You know what I'm saying?
I
And
tell you one funny thing real quick
Mhm.
is it's funny that in the Bible it rarely gets into details about people's like physical health, but in the lady that touched Jesus's cloak that he didn't know about, and he was just walking, and she had been bleeding, I think, for 12 years, and he said, and she blew all her money on doctors and didn't have anything left.
Mhm.
It was her last grasp. But anyway, go ahead.
That
Yeah,
sounds like a 12-year period, man. I can't imagine if I was your
Damn.
wife, man, with
bleeding
the
for 12
kind of
years. Yeah, anyway,
trauma that guy would have been subjected to with that. But anyway,
yeah.
so I do want to say one thing, and then we'll transition to the next issue because this is actually a good transition point. But I do want to say this that yeah, well, first of all, just to give an honest perspective, I do want to ask, we'll ask this from a conservative right wing perspective. Like, Joe, would you say that I'm someone who's transphobic or homophobic? What are your thoughts on my views on that?
No, you're postmodernist, you know, and like you probably go way beyond any conservative line. I think I'm not even sure if you hold any to any. So, you know,
That's the funniest thing because Scott knows that I've been called like the most transphobic and homophobic person online. But the thing is that I have positions that piss both sides off because I genuinely believe that like Christians do a lot of damage to these people who are like really hurting. They're hurting, and so they're hurting as it is. So why you would try to make their issue, their situations even worse is beyond me. Okay, it's beyond me why people who already have high suicide rates that you're going to do something that you're going to try to attack them to a point where you might push them over the edge. Like I don't want to live with that on my conscience. It's as simple as that. I want to try to help people. Now I think sometimes we need to take a tough love approach and say, look, this issue probably could be solved better through other means. You're going through like an extreme length when you're willing to take away your ability to reproduce and to be able to feed your, a newborn baby. I think you're going to way extreme on that. But on the other hand, if you need my help, if you're being bullied, I want to stand up against that. So, but I can't help but to have the views that I have that I'm convinced of. Because if you put a gun to my head and said, does this make sense to you? And if you don't answer, if you don't say that I actually believe people can transition, you're going to blow out my head and my daughter's as well. Even if I tried with all my might, I wouldn't be able to tell you that I was convinced of that. Like I might lie about it, but that's not going to be an actual conviction of mine. It's not going to be a conviction that these people are best served by, basically cutting up their body. Like that's, you're not going to get me to agree with that. But on the other side, look, I think that people need to be a lot more careful the way we deal with these people, and it needs to be destigmatized, in my opinion, that having this like this attacking of them. Like we need to say these people exist. We need to help them, and everyone needs to be loving and compassionate towards them. So I do want to transition though to education because this actually winds up coming up in the educational debate. Because let's talk about secularism and education. Scott, over to you.
Sir, yes, sir. So, you know, I guess like I was saying in my little rant at the top there, there's like good things and bad things about secularism versus, and that's really what we get down to is public education. Like in public education, government schools, um, religion, we want to push some people want to push, religious narratives. Um, the thing though, I would say is that, I had mentioned this before, like I'm not really afraid of Christian nationalism because most Christians believe in things like evolution. People believe in things like the earth is, millions of years old, the universe began, at the Big Bang. Most Christians, believe that stuff anyways. It's really a small minority of people that have a problem And so they want that stuff taught in school, which would be a violation of church and state separation. And so this is where the battle over church and state separation comes in, is in the schools, I think. Prayer in school, stuff like that. I've always thought, how can you take prayer out of school? Like, you can't. People can pray to themselves all day long. I think they want this great show of prayer. And then there's the problem of what religion is supposed to be represented. That becomes an issue. How would you like Muslims for to be leading the prayer today?
Right.
And it gets really weird. People aren't going to agree. So just keep it out of the school. You have your own personal beliefs, your religion. That should be enough.
Right. Hey, Dub. Hold on, Dub. I'm Christian. I don't believe in prayer in school. At least not led by the government. Like I believe having private groups is perfectly fine. But I heard a good quote that said, "As long as there's bullies and tests, there's going to be prayer in school." So yeah, Joe.
Yeah, I would say it is absolutely paramount. I think that in good keeping with evangelical workers and taxpayers, that the state absolutely fund charter schools for Christians. I mean, like you should have a flyer that says, basically, or what do they call them? Tickets, voucher. You can have a voucher that says you can go to a Christian school and the state's going to pay that school, or you can go to a secular school and the state's going to pay that school. But to have no Christian charter schools and to force everybody to go to secular schools and to be taught 8 hours a day secular theology, essentially, because when you don't bring God to a campus, he's nowhere to be found. He's not given thanks. He's not glorified. Nobody sings anything. When he's completely absent from anything you're doing, I mean, that's secularizing. Just one force from a kid's age when they're most moldable. So I would say, now, if that's going to happen over here, that's that's a thing. Give to Caesar what is Caesar. Give God what is God's. Caesar's obviously going to raise up little Caesars. So basically, I'd say as long as that balance is there, though, where someone can send their kid to a Christian school and it doesn't have to be private funded, $15,000 a year or something, I'm okay with however the system goes, because I realize that secular people don't want to send their kids to a Christian school. I think it would be good for them, but obviously if they wouldn't want to do that, and some schools, theologically, I mean, like some of these Mormon schools will probably be some of the first to take advantage of these charter schools, and I wouldn't want anybody, a Mormon or even a Jehovah's Witness or Muslim, leading just because this thing said religious on top.
Right.
I mean, and teachers, they're theologically not sound anyway, even if they're a Christian teacher at the time. So I would say that the availability, though, is very important to me.
So a couple of things. One, Hive Psi said, we don't like to be called these people or these groups of people. Please tell me how you like to be referred to, so that I'm sorry if I offended you. But I do want to say that okay, so yeah, definitely against prayer in school. The thing about with Christian education, if you look at the prices that Christian schools charge, like it's exorbitant. Like there's no way your average working class family could afford to do that. So I don't know, maybe I probably disagree with Joe as far as chartered schools, but I definitely, maybe if you got some kind of voucher, maybe if you got some kind, okay, no, actually I do agree with that. If you got some kind of voucher because you're not sending your kids to public school to be able to use at a private school, yes, and then you pray to Jesus Christ all day long, I have no issue with that. And I do want to say, when I was in middle school, our coach had a he had a prayer club where at lunchtime, when on Fridays, we basically just brought in a bunch of snacks, and then he did like a 1-minute prayer. We kind of just hung out at lunchtime. But our principal was an atheist, and he wound up shutting that down. And I would say this, like, I'm totally in favor of people having their space to go and do whatever kind of prayer they want, because we are doing a Christian prayer. But if there was a Muslim teacher and he wanted to take whatever students who actively, voluntarily said, we want to go do an Islamic prayer, I would have absolutely no issue with that whatsoever. The problem is with people like Joe who want prayer in school, they're going to want the Christian prayer, and then they're going to want the Protestants, and then the Catholics aren't going to want that. Like, I'm sure, Joe, you don't want Catholic prayers being done, right? Joe?
I'll be
No
honest.
Catholic?
The only prayer I would say get away from will be the Islamic prayer, because this is a different breed. They have like a geopolitical agenda. They want to dominate the world. They're not like, like a Mormon or Jehovah's Witness. These guys do some flyers out. I don't even care about harems or whatever. Like, go ahead, But these Muslims are a whole different breed of a religion. I mean, these guys have a big agenda, and that is to take over the world. Like these guys will do it by war, theology, rebirthing you. I mean, there's a whole different. Plus, when they get so strong and in numbers and angry, you're done. You don't really see Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses assembling to do these things or bombing planes or whatever, So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, like I would, I kind of see what you're saying about the violent, violence is coming from one religion. Unfortunately, we have to say that right now, at least at this time in history, the people that are flying planes in the buildings aren't Christians, right? I obviously agree to that. But here in the States, it seems like we have a secular breed of Muslims. For example, like where I work at a Catholic hospital, and some of the best surgeons that we have on campus are Muslims. They have the head cover and everything, women, men, everybody. They're Muslims. A lot of them are, not everybody, but a good handful of them are. Those are people that are a blessing to this country, just because they're here and they got educated and they're pouring money into the economy. They're helping our, sick people. They're doing a service to the country. So I wouldn't want to, cut my nose off to spite my face and say, well, I don't like Muslims because we have some extremists overseas doing a lot of bad things. So let's go ahead and get rid of our top surgeons, educated people, talent base because of something like that. It doesn't seem to equal the benefit that we're getting from it, right? So I'm not really sure I would agree that, I agree that violence comes from Islam right now, obviously. But
yeah, and the trickier part for me is that there's a silent majority that is in Islam, and you might like this doctor right now, but I can assure you that if the time comes and there's an active shooter in that building and he needed to alert some people, you might see a different side to him. Like he might go more of the Islamic, be quiet. Like how many Muslims knew that Israel was about to get attacked? Probably the whole of freaking Gaza knew, and Palestine and surrounding areas. No, not one person emailed freaking, and said, hey man, my son's out there building this little plane. Looks like it's got some guns on it. You guys might want to be careful. I don't know what they're planning. I hear them whispering. So we're talking about millions of these people now that are crying about being invaded and dying, everything else. They were completely silent about what they were about to do to Israel invaded. And my guess is that's all over the world. We're talking like these Muslims are not going to help the U.S. government crack down on terror in the event that, and it's coming. New York's about to get getting terrorized. This is not going to be theoretical anymore. So it's this silent majority, just like in Hitler's day. A lot of them were just quiet Germans, they just didn't say anything or fight back or nothing. And so what do you call them? Good Germans, and you say, oh, I'll live for the good. I mean, anyway, go ahead. But that just.
Well, yeah, like if that was to be the case, like that would obviously be bad. But see, the thing is that for most of American history that Muslims have been here, it's been a benefit. We haven't really suffered from most of our terrorist attacks here in America have come from the Christian right.
That's true.
Rather than Muslims. The Muslims that attack us are probably from overseas. But it seems like we're such a secular country that the Muslims here kind of respect it. They're here for a reason, and they sort of, they meld into our society a lot better. Like when I lived in Europe, it was so separated. The Muslims were all about, Sharia law, trying to get that pushed into the European governments, like in Germany and France and things like that. But here in America, we don't have that issue because we're so secular. We have a democracy.
The Muslim numbers are so low, but in these European countries now where Islam is rising and getting past a 30% in their culture, go talk to them now. Sweden is like the rape capital of the world now. all these North
Oh yeah.
African Muslims are there. I mean, it's tragic.
So hold on. I don't want to get too much on Islam because maybe we have a whole nother talk on this because I think Joe's extremely off on this issue. Badly, badly, badly. But speaking of the government, because we're specifically talking about education, and
Yeah.
so I do want to get back because that this is a bit of a tangential talking about Islam. But the thing is that okay, so I do want to say this, that my issue with invoking God or anything inside of the realms of education is that you have a couple issues too. One, you have stuff that's in the Bible that's anti-science, okay? Just flat out. There's just, you can say it's allegorical or whatever, but there's, I mean, quite frankly speaking, you could very easily interpret the Bible as being flat Earth, okay? Most people might actually, especially back in the day, believe that the earth was flat because of the Bible. So you have that. Then you also have the fact that, and actually, no, I shouldn't say this is a fact because this actually isn't a fact. Well, it is a fact that a lot of people, Christians, believe that the earth is only 6,000 years old and that the universe is like 6,000 years old, when like scientifically we know that's not true. So if you're pushing these kind of things, or that God created, you know, humans 6,000 years ago, you're going to undermine a lot of basic common sense, you know, evolution that is helpful in understanding genetics and mutations and you know, stuff like antibiotics and our immune system. You need to have a proper understanding of evolution and how the immune system works to be able to combat you know, things effectively. So to say, oh, God just did everything 6,000 years ago, that's not really helpful to society and to you know, education, because
Well,
it's related.
Yeah,
I think
and
that
I
would
agree.
be that would be debunked on every level imaginable, whatever you just said. But go ahead.
Well, I was just
It would hold on, it would be debunked. It would be debunked, Joe. That okay. First of all, the Bible doesn't even say that the Earth is 6,000 years old. What it says is that 6,000 years goes
I
from.
didn't say it was 6,000. I mean, I would say maybe 10 or 20. But anyway, go
Okay,
ahead.
that's you're still off by multiples of thousands. So it doesn't even matter if you said the Earth is 100,000 years old. You'd be off by so much to even say something like that.
I'll just disclaim this one just to disclaim it. If you looked at Adam, would you say Adam was 0, or how old do you think he was?
No, there's lots of arguments you can make there.
I mean,
Like for example,
clearly God can make anything mature that he wants. I mean, he doesn't have to need man's permission. He can make it look older. He can, you know, or not. I mean, you know, Stratosphere, he can do whatever he wants. He's not bound by man's timing. I mean, there's and evolution is such a ridiculous freaking idea. It's like, do you mean? I mean, just basic logic. Do you really think that somewhere? I mean, it's just not even a chicken and egg argument, which is about the simplest one there is. But I mean, do you really think that any species would sit there and let another one grow up around it and not eat it? And you'd have no transitional fossils anywhere about the supposed gigantic period, and that somehow you can't turn a monkey into anything or be. I mean, just that one is so painful. Like it just hurts. Like that. Think of something out. I prefer Big Bang or something.
This is getting into an area that I would love to debate, but this is not the
all right, we'll pass on
time for it. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Isaiah.
well, yeah, I don't think like these are topics. There's a lot of theological stuff we could unpack in Genesis, and there's lots of different theories. But I'm saying, as far as the government goes, because this isn't solved science, what's kind of stuff that Joe's saying, this should not be stuff we should be talking about in school. Like we have these discussions inside of a church. That's all I was getting at.
Oh yeah. No, there's way more soundness to scripture with explaining humanity, health, everything else, emotional health. I mean, that's a whole different. I mean, to sort of try to, it's painful. Never mind. Go ahead and go on because it's too deep. This is.
I mean, here's the thing. From my view, just from my view, we're, you know, I understand you believe differently, but I think the evidence is so overwhelming for naturalism and evolution by common descent that, you know, it should belong in the school as the only thing taught is science. I don't think the Bible is science at all. Science didn't come about until way, way, way later. Even Christian scholars agree that, like, the creation account in Genesis was all metaphor, you know, that it wasn't taken literally because of the
I don't
fact
know who
that,
any evangelical would agree to that, but anyway, go ahead.
yeah, I know. Like I said, I know they wouldn't. That's a whole nother thing that you'd have to, of course, study and figure out what that view is. But the thing is that even Christians, scholars, they see the Bible as not a scientific book, but as a metaphorical book when it comes to things like creation and things like that. So
it's impossible for it to be a metaphor, because the minute you said that, then it just takes away the entire Bible. Then you get into this group of Germans that started saying this one came from God, this didn't come from God, this is certainly an analogy, this is certainly not. You have to accept it as fully truthful from beginning to end, or you doom it.
I had a debate with someone today. On this topic, and my position was that the Bible writers intended it to be taken literally.
Yep.
But what he kept showing me was Christian scholars who say it was metaphor, and he was saying, I'd rather believe scholars over some atheist on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, once you become the arbitrator of what truth is and not the Bible, and you say this one could be metaphor, that it's just a rabbit hole you can't get out of forever.
But Joe, do you actually think? Let me ask you an honest to God question. Do you actually think that the metaphors that Jesus used, do you literally think that any of those actually happened?
Well, it's all these things are little semantic things. I mean, you say that the sun rose. We know it isn't rise, the earth spins or whatever. Whatever.
No, I didn't ask you that. I asked you a very simple question. Do you think that the stuff that Jesus said actually happened in his parables?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are stories in terms of like people recognize they're writing a story like a parable, But when you say something factual, then he usually determines it as a fact, like
okay. Let me just give you I'll just ask you two real quick. Like, do you honestly think that, like, for example, the Good Samaritan parable or the one about the son, like the son who?
Yeah, that's a story I could see very plausible, both of them. I mean,
yeah, actually, I do believe that the Good Samaritan parable actually took place, because actually it's the only one where Jesus actually gives a location of where it's like actually taking place. So, but the one about the son, what's the son who goes away and he comes back?
Prodigal son.
Okay, there you go. God, an atheist knowing the Bible better. That's sad.
Jeez.
I know, you're just terrible, Isaiah.
I know. So the prodigal son. Okay, so do you think that actually happened?
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Okay, so the thing is, for me, whether or not either of those actually happen is completely irrelevant to what the story is about. The story is about redemption, one of them. The story is about the person, Joe, who you think wouldn't do the right thing, which might be the Muslim, the Sheikh, the gay, the atheist, the transgender person, is going to go and do the right thing above the Christian leaders. That's the important thing about the Good Samaritan parable. You put so much stock and faith in the politicians and these televangelists and all these different people, these writers, these theologians, and yet when it comes down to do the right thing, they don't do the right thing when they see people suffering. That's an issue, and that Jesus gives this story, it's irrelevant to whether or not it happened or not. What he's saying here is that people who you might not think are the most righteous or most holy might be the Muslims, and I've witnessed this myself. I've witnessed when I was sick, Joe, when I was sick, when I almost died, my Muslim friends came in and pitched in and helped me out, man. So that's been my experience with Muslims. Sure, there's some bad apples. Good.
Well, let me ask you a question. This could go to both of you guys, because both of you are Bible believers, and we're talking about education and whether we should teach creation in the school or whether we should keep it secular or whatever. But, what do you think about this? Now, the sun, would you say the sun gives off light?
Appears to be burning. It seems to get off light and heat.
Yeah, so the sun is a producer of light, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at like Genesis 1:16, I always love this one. God made two great lights. The greater light, which was the sun, to rule the day, and the lesser light, which was the moon, to rule the night.
Yeah.
All right. So we know that the moon isn't a light. It doesn't generate a light like the sun does. It reflects the light from the sun. Now, if you look at the Talmud, all the way back through Jewish rabbinic tradition, they always viewed the earth as flat, that the moon and the suns were lights that came on at night. You know, the moon comes on at night and the sun comes on during the day. Right? That's how that was their paradigm. That was their worldview.
I mean, the flat earth thing, I mean, you'd have looked up at the moon and said, clearly this is around. So I would think that most people would interpret things around. Did we lose Isaiah?
Right. But what I'm saying is, yeah, I think he's coming back in though. But my point was that, you know, if you know, Genesis is a metaphor, you know, then we could get away with that, but it wouldn't be science. Like my whole debate today, I brought that up with this Christian, and the Christian was saying, well, you're talking about, you're reading Genesis as though it's a science book. It's not a science book.
Wait, hold on. You've made it a giant error. I'm sorry, I accidentally clicked out. First of all, there's only one light. Okay, there's only one light. At night, God turns it down so that we could sleep. Okay, it's as simple as that.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That was a stupid joke. Go ahead.
So let's say this. Let's say a Christian thought that story was metaphor, and some other Christians say no, Genesis is a literal telling of history, of creation. So all of that stuff is not metaphor, it's literal. Which, you know, who wins in the public school for that debate?
I think you just flat out say God created the heavens and earth, give it 7 days, as he said. And actually, you know, the light, he is the light, the original light that lights up man in his heart. And that was the original light. And then, you know, the sun and the stars are made later or whatever, you know. But yeah, it's interesting that he just says, and then he created these little lights in the air, like with the stars. It's like how vast they are. It's just crazy that it's such a simple passage. That one right there, man. The one thing that makes me believe in God, apart from just scripture and knowing Christ and whatever, is when you consider the vastness of the whole universe, as much we can get, and you say, what are the probabilities of us, a speck of sawdust on a speck of sand inside this? Oh, man. Like, it just makes you feel so like, holy moly.
I understand that 100% because I was a Christian. That's what drew me into it. But here's the thing, Joe, is that people can look at that same thing that you look at. They can look at the trees and decide, you know why I know there's no God? Because I look at the trees, I look at the stars, I look at the mountains, I look at nature. You see what I'm saying? That stuff is subjective.
What? Well, hold on. I got it. What do you mean by that? That makes no sense. Expand on that.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you why. Because these people actually exist. There's people that look at nature, they look at the trees, they look at the chaos of the universe, you know, the beauty, the bad, the good and the ugly, everything. And they reason to themselves, this is why I know there is no God. That's how they see it, for right or wrong. Now, other people will look at the same nature and say, this is how I know there's a God. Because look at the vastness of the star. Look at the trees. So
yeah, that's a person argument. I would say that's an elect person versus just a non-elect and down for hell.
Well, either way you want to believe it, the situation still exists that way. Yeah. So being that it exists that way, where does that leave us in the public school system? Because we can't sit there and say, the government can't teach people how they should subjectively feel about the world.
Give me 1 second. The conservative is about to go grab a beer real quick. And I'll say that's why we need two school systems. But give me just a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So, hey, Dub, so a couple of things I want to say. One is I actually completely agree with you on this, because I do want to have these discussions with my daughter. You know, I take my daughter to church every Sunday. Mm-hmm. And just our scripture for January was, you know, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that's something I'm teaching to her. And that's something I teach it. I want to be taught at home and inside of the school. I'm not sorry. I want being taught at home and inside of church. Okay.
Right.
I don't want it taught inside school. I have my beliefs. The reality is, though, is that we can't even, inside of Christians, we can't even agree on whether or not how much of this is metaphor, how much of this is literal. Like Joe and I can't agree on that. So
Right.
you're exactly right. Who's gonna win out? I believe that I have different interpretations of Genesis, but I think Joe and I would both equally agree, though. As much as we might disagree, we might absolutely agree that atheism makes no sense. It's morally and intellectually bankrupt, and but we might diverge on a lot of different areas because
I would agree.
So let me
let
me kick it back to you guys then.
Yeah.
So let me kick it back. This is my response to that. So I don't get my morals and my grounding as a person, my spirituality. I don't get any of that from atheism because, as you said, atheism is bankrupt of those things. It's not about anything. All it's about is a big negative. I don't believe in God, whatever that means, right? So as an atheist, we don't look at those things for the things you're looking at. You're equating atheism with theism. It's actually the opposite. Theism isn't about religion. It's just about I believe in God. It's about a God belief. So you have Muslim theists, you have Christian theists, on and on and on, right? Hindus and Mormons and whatever. But atheism is the opposite of that, saying I don't believe in any gods, and that's it. It has nothing to say about morals, politics. Now, even though there are a lot of cult-like people out there that have smuggled in atheism as the banner in which progressivism and liberalism falls under.
Right.
That doesn't make it true, though. That just means that a group of people have hijacked a label. And people do this all the time. Look at the Westboro Baptist Church. They hijack Christianity and then go out and preach that people are going to hell over at funerals for soldiers and stuff. Yeah, your father who died in the war, he's going to hell because he fought in Satan's system. That's what they preach.
Right.
So is that representative of your form of Christianity? Hell no,
Or Jake Gyllenhaal is going to hell because he played a gay dude in a movie, right? Like that's such a stupid, idiotic way of reasoning that like if you're in a movie and you portray someone, like if that were the case, like no one ever make a German movie about Adolf Hitler because guess what? You're an actual Nazi if you portray, or you're bad because if you portray someone who's a villain, that's so idiotic. But anyway, I'm very, very, very firmly on believing this that like pray. Okay, so I'll say this: the Bible shouldn't be taught in school unless it's being taught right next to the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, any other of the holy scriptures of all the world religions. Like I do believe that general idea should be taught to children in school, like as like a general, religion studies. But the problem is that I definitely don't believe that like my brand of Christianity should be foisted onto children who might be Jehovah's Witness, or they might be a Mormon, or they might be in the cult of atheism at school. I don't want to force them to do that. But on the other hand, if I was my adult self, or if I was my dad when that they shut down our prayer meeting, that's something I would have complained to the school board about, because we were on our own freedom going in and separating ourselves and having this brief prayer. That, in my opinion, is totally fine. My issue is whenever you stand in front of the kids and say, Jesus wants you to do this, Jesus wants you to do that, you need to do this prayer, you need to not use your rosary beads, whatever. You know what I mean? Like saying you should pray in any way in front of kids at the school is.
Why do they bring Jesus into it? Like, hasn't that man been through enough already?
I will say this. Everybody's theories right now are coming to a head, though. I hope you gentlemen see this, man. This is a whole different ballgame in this world now, man. Before, you could talk about these things and everything was like, oh, maybe we can do this and this and that. Everything has been proven now, man. All your theories, you can go and see how they worked out in Europe, for the last 20 years and what they've come to, and you can say, oh shoot, I guess this theory would happen to America, wouldn't it? You'd be absolutely right. The way Western culture can be taken over by Islam, the way secularism can just deplete churches, big cathedrals down to nothing. They can turn into bars, and now they're strip clubs, some of them. You can just look at why God is judging America. We're trying to export the homosexual LGBT agenda to Africa and saying we're not going to give Kenya any tax dollars like we normally do unless you guys do gender affirming stuff. Dude, the black people in Kenya are like, go to hell, you people. We're not going to take up your stupid ass agenda. Those people will live. God will bless them. At the end of the day, man, it's meeting the rubber meets the road now, guys. There's no more before we could joke and be all this and that. Everybody got their worldviews to jump around now. He's collapsing it all, ladies and gentlemen. It is coming down.
Joe,
bad.
Joe, hold on. Joe, you could not be any further off from the truth here, okay? Listen to this. You want to blame secular people for what's happening in Europe, dude? That is the failure of the Christians. That is when the government, the Church of England, started mixing itself in with the kings and politics, Joe. That is a failure of the Christians, not the atheists. The atheists are not the one that caused these issues, okay? It's Christians who get so caught up in the religious, in the political system, and they get so caught up in trying to force their religion down on other people's throats rather than just living it out and people being drawn to the light. Like, you could not be more ass backwards, Joe, if your life depended on it right now. Seriously. I mean it as your cousin, someone who loves you. You're totally backwards right now. Completely.
I'm a church historian, man. You sound like an idiot, man. But I get you. You're thinking about like some old kings and queens or something, or trapping people, dude. You got no idea about numbers or what happened. What happened after the war? We could count these things from the 1950s on, because basically everybody, when we went to war, became Christians all of a sudden, and nobody cared about your secular agenda. They're all praying to God before they go to the Normandy or what else. Anyway, go ahead.
No, Joe, I was going to ask a question.
Hold on. I got to continue. This is going to be friendly fire right here, because I have been to Europe and I have seen these churches that have all been closed down. And yeah, you're right. A lot of them are either like community centers. Sometimes some of them hold raves or whatever. You know, they're just, nobody wants to go to these churches anymore, Joe. They've spent, and they're the most beautiful churches in the world, I might add to you. I mean, I've seen some beautiful churches in America, but these places take it to a completely different level as far as, and the thing is, it's pageantry, okay? It's pageantry. If you take a look at the Church of England, the way these guys dress up with their gold and flashy, I mean, these guys have more bling.
That's why there was the Reformation. That's what Martin Luther.
These guys have more bling than like rappers there. So you can't fault people for not wanting anything to do with that religion, Joe. That's a failure. That was a failure of the Christians. Here, I don't know why you would blame atheists for the failure.
Let's put it to you this way. The whole wokeism, this whole woke thing, right? The cult of, you know, a lot of people, right? Like the cult of wokeism, right? So that comes from mainly, would you say, the Republican side or the Democratic side?
Oh, Democrats.
Okay, Democrats, right? Would you agree, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as much as I hate to play identity politics, what group of people, as a group, as a racial group, okay, what group is the most religious as a racial group in America?
Well, obviously, clearly,
maybe Latino,
and who else?
Blacks.
Exactly. The African American, the black church, the cornerstone of Martin Luther the King, you know, civil rights, you know, all of this stuff, right? So black people are mainly, what political party are they usually affiliated with?
But these guys have been mind tricked and all sorts of stuff, man. I mean, the CIA,
right? Regardless. We'll get into causation later, but we all know that Latino minority, really all minorities, mainly are Democrats, right? And they're also mainly religious. Is that by accident?
I don't know if you can quite call these people these days. They're talking about the old school world, man. This new breed, last 20 years, it's not the black community. We're talking about the old, Negro spirituals and stuff. Those guys were a different breed.
Yeah,
These
but
young
all I'm
guys,
saying, it right, and all that, and I agree. But all that aside, most African Americans as a group are Democrat, and most African Americans as a group are churchgoers.
I would not say that at this point in history. These guys, considering their numbers, do not church service on Sunday. I would say black churches are dwindled.
Yeah, I would actually agree with Joe here, but where are you going with this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
what I'm saying is I'm not disagreeing that they dwindled. That's not the point at all. They could dwindle down to 10. If they dwindle down to 10, I guarantee you the white community has dwindled down to 2. The point is that we have an alignment with wokeism and religion. So it's just very ironic because for the
Explain it, Isaiah, because I don't get it.
Yeah, you're losing me here, right? Because what I see when wokeism is the rejection, like it's rejecting certain basic fundamental.
Yeah,
and this is probably where Joe and I
just agreed. That's what you're missing it because you
we didn't. Hold on. We didn't agree. Hold on, no, we didn't agree with you. You're playing some kind of semantical game here, where you're saying, yeah, you're right. You're right that historically speaking, I will grant you this. And that's why I said Latino first, because when I'm thinking about what most Latinos are, most of them are like hardcore Catholics. Okay, so I don't know. I'd have to look at the numbers there, but these people are like pretty strong Catholics. But now you're getting to blacks, and you're saying that the blacks are the source of it. And as far as wokeism, no, I would say the majority of the wokeism I've seen has come from like more middle class, it comes from more middle class white folks, from what I've seen.
Well, this is what I'm saying. That this is what the data holds out. Is that 8 in 10 Black Americans attend a religious service at least yearly? This is from the Pew Research Center from last year.
On Easter, maybe.
Well, regardless, and believe me, I have plenty of black friends and family, and most of them, the one thing that we never have in common is that I'm an atheist, because they're very, that's the one thing they will never be. It's like there's a saying, we will never be Republican and we will never be an atheist as a black person. That's how ingrained this crap is. And I would agree with Joe. There was a reason for that. And it's because of a lot of brainwashing and a lot of, Thomas Sowell goes into this. This is where I'm getting a lot of this from. Thomas Sowell.
Oh, Joe loves Thomas Sowell.
I married that guy.
Great. Awesome. Then you should understand where I'm getting at. If you've heard his speeches on this, that religion and being a Democrat or being liberal, these two things have always been inculcated into the black community.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense.
You see what I'm saying? Those two things go together. And so this is all I'm really asking, is this on purpose or is this all on accident? I think it's on purpose. I agree with Thomas Sowell. This stuff is, this is how Democrats destroy, people. They actually destroy the black family.
The black communities have strong families, man.
Right, because they're and they're very religious. Yeah, and so on that side, right, exactly. And yeah, you're right. The church attendance is dwindling, and because it's no longer needed. The church used to be a democratic stronghold, but now the church is moving away from politics altogether. Except for the black church. The black church is still, it's always Democrats who are trying to tell speeches in the churches like Biden did not long ago, but it's changing. I will tell you that there's a big conservative movement that I think is going on in the black community, which is a good thing. It kind of balances things out.
Yeah. I actually agree with that, but I think the wokeism is like it separates itself because a lot of it's caught up in gender ideology and believing that you should foist this onto to children like in schools, okay? And this is where I'm going to say I'm completely Joe and I might be completely more in line because I will tell you this. So, I live in South Korea, man. Education, Joe's have seen this firsthand. It is everything here. The average family spends per kid between 500 to $2,000 a month on additional private education for their children. Okay.
Wow.
So after these kids get out of school, they have to go and attend private academies. Okay. And so a lot of these schools too, they go in and they're wearing, they have to wear their uniforms. You don't see stuff like drinking, smoking, anything like that. Teen pregnancies just does not exist here in South Korea. So they they go into the school. You don't see piercings and purple hair and green hair. They understand that when you're there at school, you're there to study. What you do on your own personal time out of school is up to you, but you come here and you need to focus on education. That's why they have college graduation rates that are superior to some high school graduation rates in America.
Would you say that's top
Right, Joe?
down causation or bottom up?
Joe?
I will
Right?
say this, and I will say that this kind of trumps everything at this point for me mentally with this whole thing. Um, dude, I don't know how whatever happened there. They got some things right, capitalism, this shame stuff. They kept some of this Buddhist stuff, and dude, I don't know how all this worked out in Korea, dude. But these guys have the 10 largest churches in the world, but somehow they stopped seeing children as a blessing and started seeing them as a financial burden. And somehow the theology got really screwed up with their families and birthrights and stuff. And bro, no matter what we think about some of the height of Christianity, however their pastors interpret it, whatever, this is a dying culture. They'll be dead in freaking 50 years, dude. These guys have like their birth rates are so low. So it doesn't matter. However, the human flourishing was supposed to go, somewhere their theology got so screwed up that they started having like one kid caring about their image. There's some things you just could not disengage these people from. And it had a lot to do with the West bringing in prosperity and corporatism and some things. I mean, we brought schools in and hospitals, but along with that, somehow there was this reaction to after the war that they just all need to be rich and have a name.
Yeah.
I think it was just mixed with their past religious Shintoism or whatever. Like, anyway, man, it's a story case in like benevolence. Just I don't know.
So what Joe's talking about right there is they've gone overboard. Like they've spent so much money on education. You have to have like a couple $100,000 in the bank before you even think about starting to have a kid here. You know what I mean? If people don't have like 200K in their own house, they won't even consider like having a kid. They have to save up the money. They want to be able to send them to like private elementaries where they're dropping like $1,000 to $1,600 a month on like their 4-year-old kids. So they have gone a bit. That's true. But still, though, the way that they emphasized it, I think America, there needs to be a middle ground between what America has and what they have here in South Korea.
Well, my thought is that this isn't a big surprise because, like I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, whoa! Who is this classic conservative? I need another beer. Give me a second. Oh my gosh!
So, Rush Limbaugh, he used to always talk about how, the Asians are going to outperform us because they have such a different culture, a culture of hard work, of discipline, of educating. And, back then, my first impression, it sounds really positive. It sounds like, wow, this is kind of the model. This is kind of what we should be doing. Be more like, Korea. Be more, raise your kid hard to be studious and pour money into education. That way our society will grow and we'll beat the world. That's a positive thing, right? But on the other hand, as we're discussing it, we're talking about, the loss of spirituality. you know, the materialistic, looking at your kid as a commodity, a more darker side seems to come out from this conversation. And
Yeah.
so, you know, this is what I'm saying about values. And this stuff is really all about values and stuff like that. If a conservative is his value is the Korean way, that's the country they want. And they align
Yeah.
themselves with religion and evangelical, you know, religions and stuff like that, you know. But on the other hand, you know, you've got the Democrats who are trying to win out with, you know, a whole different sort of tyranny altogether.
Yeah.
There's got to be a middle ground, and that's where I'm coming from.
Right, but here's where Joe and other conservatives lack the common, just most basic understanding of reality, where they'll brag about South Korea, like, yeah, like the largest churches in the whole world are here in South Korea. Okay, Yoido Full Gospel Church has like literally hundreds of thousands of people who go to this
Almost a
church.
million.
Okay,
Almost a million.
yeah, it's insane. Okay, and yet I've traveled around the world. Next to Thailand, South Korea is by far the most immoral country I have ever seen in my life. Okay, so there is a church on every single corner here, but what's also on every single corner is a freaking bar and a freaking massage parlor, full service massage parlor. If you get my drift, and they even have like home delivery services for the prostitute. I mean, it is rampant here. The immorality. Joe's seen this on every other corner. There is a love hotel you can go to, where you can rent out like a room for like $20 for like 3 hours.
Well, I mean,
but they're on every other corner here. So South Korea is simultaneously super religious and also the most immoral country I've ever seen, next to Thailand. Thailand is kind of like on a different league of their own. Yeah, you can't really compare anything to Thailand, but South Korea is a close second.
Just here in the South, I'm in the Bible Belt. You know, I live in the Bible Belt, and there's so many strip clubs. There's so much prostitution in the street. There's so much, you know, of everything. You know, it's like Gotham. You know, and yet, you know, there's a church on every corner, just like there's a gun store on every corner, you know, and very religious place, man. Like, people usually, some of the opening questions they ask you is what church do you go to? You know, just to kind of make small talk. And which is really weird, because then on the other side at night, you go out here and you see a bunch of zombies walking around on fentanyl, and prostitutes hitting you up at the stoplight, and all kinds of stuff, you know.
Yeah, I will say this in regards to the gospel and like all this. Okay, so no matter what I ever talk about or this or that, there's a certain plane that's always in my mind, and that is, I put everybody in the same category in terms of like a pastor, a murderer, a rapist, a child molester, a cultist. There's no one righteous, not one. We're all doomed, dude. I don't care who it is. We're all on the same plane, man. And you could get a graph and you could try to put people up and down, but as far as the earth is from heaven, what are they going to reach an inch past you in a visual sense? So, well, you know, when we look at society, I don't even look at them like, I mean, I'm just saying there's darker edges of things that help promote the gospel and give freedom to it and stuff like that. And I worry about that, not being able to preach it. Not that it hasn't thrived in Rome, where it was, you know, they'll throw you in a freaking hungry lions to feed hungry lions with your body.
We kind of need the evil, though, don't we? I mean, think about it. You know, what would be the need of Jesus existing and dying for us if we didn't have? I mean, even in his day, it was the same way.
Yeah, we all need salvation. Like,
so you know, my point, really, I guess my observation is that when religion becomes political, it kind of loses the point, you know, because you're trying to look at the politics as a solution to a moral dilemma or problem, yet we kind of need these things.
Yeah, the only trick though with me is I need someone that's going to give a window for me to be able to set up. I've been thinking about building this cafe called the City of Christos, and it's going to be a place where you could walk into there, get some food, get some coffee, but there's also going to be a Christian podcast going. There's also going to be some prayer rooms. There's going to be some other things. Now, if I try to do that in Portland right now, the city may or may not give me a permit. Like these guys may say, no, man, this is going to be religious issues. You need to register your church. They could try they even stop In-N-Out Booger from coming here because they don't like that they put Bible passages on the cups.
So, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, there's a strip
club. Well, you don't agree with what?
Go ahead.
Putting Bible passages on the cup?
No, I don't agree with
In-N-Out Burger has Bible passages on the
making it hard for religious groups to have their own little venues and stuff like that.
Hey, oh yeah, good.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say that just seems wrong to me.
Hey, it's at the 2-hour mark, so if we could do our last opening our last closing statements, give last thoughts. Because I do have some. It's Saturday morning here. I do got to get going right now, but I do want to. So if you guys can also touch about the LGBT plus agenda being done in schools, because I recently saw something where like teachers had transition closets where their students could go in there and transition to the opposite sex to like keep it hidden from their families. So I've seen this kind of stuff, and again, this gets back to more just education in general. That stuff to me is distracting. So I think kids come to school, they should be focusing on learning. Like that's it. That's the extent. No church, no gender stuff, no personal political identity. Just go to school and learn. Go wild on your free time. So yeah, if you guys have any last thoughts, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I'm very despondent these days. I'm not the normal optimistic revive around the corner, enlightenment mood. I used to be, and I used to have a passion behind putting some together these projects and books that I thought that could go to the public, this and that. But the more you look at culture, the way it's churning, and the more, if Biden gets reelected, man, I'm gonna cash out in somewhere or another. Like I think I've been looking up some farms in Idaho. I've been like other stuff where I'm like, I'm going to have to make a big move to just sort of buckle down the hatches because pretty much they'll have to steal the election from Trump because he's ahead in all swing states. By every measure, this guy should win. And whatever they do from that point to this is going to be some of the darkest stuff we've ever seen. Worse than this COVID vaccine, and so I just feel like if you got faith, pray your ass off right now for yourself and your family or community, because it ain't gonna go well, man. You're gonna see some of the darkest thing you've ever seen in your life for the next 7 months, and it's gonna be completely out of control. They're gonna poison water, they're gonna make trains wreck. They just burnt up the largest wildfire in that Texas has ever seen, and only now is the governor kind of going, hey, there's something suspicious about it. The fact that, you're in Texas, relatively large amount of Christians there, and you're one of the strongholds for conservatism, and it isn't dawning you some of these things, makes me go, God, these people are very naive at this point. How essentially Christianity is under attack under the umbrella of these like globalists and working economic forum dudes. Because here's the thing, it's not just MAGA Republicans, it is the fact that so many MAGA Republicans are Christians, and we have a stronghold of truth that puts God above government, above culture, above everything, and we will sacrifice our life for this. And that's a very dangerous world for people just trying to pollute your mind through the media, just trying to constantly bombard you with statements that aren't true, but if they bombard you with another enough, free democracy, eventually you actually believe that. And it's the scariest, most horrifying thing to watch people hypnotized around you. I sat here for 2 weeks. I got this homeless guy in my garage living. He's an ex-Mormon. I talked to this guy in every which way manner, benevolent, gave him money, clothes, everything. It's like talking to a wall, man. You can't overcome this stuff. It's so ingrained. And you're like, holy moly, like, I don't know if you got to fast, pray, or whatever. But, dude, all I'm saying is everybody be very careful. Pay a lot of attention to your mind, your soul right now, because the season's already here. and already coming, man, where you're under attack from every angle, from social media to everything you can name, man. So I would just say, no matter what we're talking about, worry about those things, people. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree that we are in a shifting time, but we're always in a shifting time, more or less. And each generation thinks that their particular generation is going to be the worst it's ever been, because especially the older generation. But and the one thing that, and this isn't necessarily a positive outlook that I'm trying to give you, and this is just as a secular, from my point of view, just as a secular person, not a Christian, I would say that, it isn't just the culture wars, I guess, that Joe was kind of referring to, that is in fact happening. There is sort of a war between, religious factions and secular factions, and mainly wokeism versus, conservatism or whatever. All of these things are really truly happening. And, and it's especially hyped up because of the internet. But there's other things, there's other factors that will change culture, and this is going to be our technology. That's the one thing you guys aren't talking about, and how it relates. You might think, what is technology? How would that have anything to do with this culture war, and the way things are changing? I'm telling you, when human beings are out of the picture, which is what we're really striving for, right? With this AI stuff, when human beings are out of the picture, we don't know what it's going to look like 5-10 years from now. We don't know what it's going to look like. We could be in the Matrix for all we know, with a computer deciding how culture is supposed, if even we are supposed to be here. It's like things could really change in such a dramatic way. It's so hard to predict, but I would say it's kind of limited to think that it's just going to stay in this culture war of, red against blue or religious against anti-religious, and it's just going to be in that fight, and then it's going to turn into, no, I think it's going to surpass all that. And it's just no telling what it's going to be. And this is because of our technology, and it's in the funny thing, this is the other thing I would say, whether you're a Christian or not, you're going to mutually agree to the Matrix. You're going to mutually agree to it. Everyone will, because it's going to be undeniable. It's going to be undeniable. So I hear you, Joe. You're saying that you guys will dive, destroy culture for it, whatever. I don't think, in my opinion, if I had to make a prediction, I would say that everybody is going to mutually jump in on the Matrix. Guarantee you.
Okay, yeah, we're already in it, and it's done. I think everything's been. I think it's done, man. I would like. Yeah,
it's on its way. Yeah,
it's in it. You can't get out of it.
No. Okay, Christians are part of it. The Christians are part of it.
Yeah, hold on. I do want to get my last point, and then this we'll cut out. So, okay, so I do want to say I think you led a good. You led right very good into a next podcast we could do, which is on technology, and the AI evolution is going to change the way everybody operates within the next 10 years. I don't think we're going to recognize the world in 10 years. Because from what I've already seen in my little short time interacting with it, it's breathtaking what's possible. But because I use it a lot, just this last week I generated a really tight rap song, and it did it instantly, and that thing slaps, man. I do want to say that. But so yeah, we'll talk about that one next time. But I do want to say that as well as Joe knows the Bible, it's amazing that he cannot see how much MAGA has absolutely sold out Christianity for the sake of following a complete narcissist who stands against everything that Christ stood for. So when you start to think that, all we need to do is make more Christians or get Christianity into the government, that's all we need to do, and that's going to solve things. People like MAGA, Joe and other MAGAs, they want to put Christianity into the schools and into the government. And I say, stop, man. You need to get the Christianity into the Christians first. That's the problem. Jesus talked about going out and making disciples. And whenever you convert a disciple, you've actually made them more blind than you. You're out blind, poking out other people's eyes. So this is a big part of the problem, is just the lack of actually following what the gospel had to say. So I do want to say that I really strongly believe we need to prayer inside of our home and inside of churches. Strong, hardcore prayer, not inside of the school that's being forced on anyone. And there's a lot to say on the other topics. I think we discussed a lot, but thank you guys very much for your input. I really, really, really appreciate it, Joe. Really appreciate this.
All right, man. You guys take it easy there, brother.
All right, guy.
All right.
Till next time.
I'll leave you with this outro, and yeah, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, website, all that good stuff. We're continually having these kind of discussions, moving it forward. We've decided to cut these talks into like several different ones so that we're not trying to solve everything in one talk. So look forward to that in the future. So thanks a lot, guys, again. And here we go. Here's the outro.